Welcome everyone to the second episode of The Experiment Floor. Today, as part of our second examination episode, we will be joined by Chief Engineer Ero as we examine the combat and field characteristics of the power beam. The power beam is a fairly simple yet incredibly useful weapon that is known to be a staple for Chozo power suits and represents the most basic and universal weapon system that is used by the Chozo during times of conflict. It comes as the standard weapon system for all power suits with Chozo design, and its basic properties have been successfully copied and used by other races over time, though the initial Chozo design carries some attributes to it that can make it more useful when combined with other weapon systems, especially with other energy-based weapon and concussive weapon systems. The power beam consists of a basic energy cannon that comes pre-installed with most arm cannons of Chozo design, and the weapon itself fires out balls of concentrated light energy as damaging bursts that can inflict trauma on the skin of a target. Individual shots from this weapon system are weak, and are usually only effective against weak creatures with limited defenses, but there is a benefit to this, as the weapon itself draws energy straight from an energy core that is built directly into the arm cannons of Chozo power suits, and thus can never run out of ammunition, drawing power from the suit itself while the suit itself draws power from its surroundings. Because the projectiles draw from the simple source of power, it also means that projectiles fired from this weapon can be done so at a very rapid pace, usually as fast as the possessor of the weapon system can pull down the trigger for said weapon. In some cases, it can even be modeled to fire bursts of shots at targets to inflict even more rapid fire damage, though the effectiveness of this can vary between different models. As noted, this simple use of light energy gives the weapon a universal nature to it, and it has been copied to some extent by many different races across the cosmos, though the adoption of such weapon systems has been slow and generally reserved for bounty hunters that can afford the expensive replication process needed to perfectly mimic the attack capabilities of this weapon. The rapid-fire nature of the power beam enables its wielder to rapidly attack and overwhelm those that otherwise stay to get in the range of its offensive attributes, but while it has an incredible rate of fire to it, this comes with a significant drawback when it comes to firepower and the range of the weapon. The power beam's energy projectiles are only able to inflict damage to other creatures if they lack durable skin or armor of some sort, as individual shots from this weapon inflict damage only because light energy contained within each shot is dispersed rapidly into the target and surrounding airspace as it dissipates, and thus cannot really penetrate the bodies of creatures the same way weapons like the light beam would, despite the attacks both using light energy as a primary source of power. This means that even simple energy weapons can match it for power, and thus make it somewhat bereft of serious advantages on its own in a firefight. This is made more problematic because of the fact that the weapon normally has a very short reach to its base form, and more permanent upgrades like the long beam upgrade are really needed to bring out the weapon's maximum efficiency in combat. Thankfully, these types of upgrades tend to be less modular and more permanent when applied to this particular beam weapon, so as long as such a basic upgrade can be obtained, the power beam can prove to be an effective weapon for handling basic enemies from afar, and the beam's own modular capacity to stack beam weapon effects on itself can give the standard weapon even more combat versatility when properly upgraded.
Alright, I might not exactly be a combat expert, and can't entirely speak to the usefulness of a weapon like this, but to be honest, it's got a lot going for it, even if it might seem rather weak. It ain't gonna do much against armored creatures, but that's kind of why missiles are a thing, you know? You gotta use the right weapon for the right job, and in the case of this thing, that means knowing when your basic weapon isn't going to be enough to get the job done. That said, the fact that the power beam is self-sustaining from the possessor's armor suit makes it a hell of a welcome sight, as you don't need to ever worry about running out of ammo with it. Trust me, back in the day, that used to be a big problem for the Galactic Federation, and even us to some extent, but we've improved a lot on our end as well since then. Of course, I think some of our own arm cannons are stronger than this energy weapon, but I wouldn't count it out. They might not pack a hell of a punch on its own, but its effects can be altered for the beam weapons, so anyone that can manage to slap something else on it to buff it are likely to find themselves as a one-man, or one-woman, army. If you're the trigger-happy short gunner, then this is the weapon for you. Just don't point at anyone's face if you don't want to be assaulted in close quarters on the fault of its limited strength.
Thank you for attending this presentation on the experiment floor. Make sure to keep a close eye on others if you need a bit of target practice. It can be fun to simply fire away with no remorse at anything that moves, but if your shots aren't getting through, then you might need to aim a little better or switch out artillery if you want to get past the toughest of enemies that you might come across. Thank you for reaching the end of this presentation. While we might not always get along, the space pirates and myself, in whatever capacity we can manage, are dedicated to analyzing and examining the life forms of many different worlds, extant and extinct, to show the great variety of life that exists out within the greater cosmos. If you enjoyed this info video and would like to see more, please like, comment, and subscribe for more information. We'll do our best to keep pumping out data so the greater public has an understanding of what to expect when exploring alien planets and their denizens. With that, have a safe journey, and have your bribes prepared beforehand if you happen to come near our territory.